Okay, here I am making another drawing from Childhood's End. This time it's Rick Stormbrand. I can't remember his name right now. I've just been listening to the audiobook recently, and then I watched the miniseries. And first I drew Corellin, the alien who came down to Earth. And this time I'm drawing Rick as he's hanging out in front of his farmhouse. After drawing this, I kind of regretted drawing the house at more of a diagonal than it was in the scene that I was drawing from pretty much the opening minutes of episode 1. And I don't like how the triangular aspect of the house framed his head, ended up framing his head in this layout of the composition. If I were to draw it again, I would move the house over a bit or make it smaller so that the triangle wasn't making a direct framing device for his head. I made a few mistakes with the anatomy of his arm and hand as well, because the image I was drawing from was just from like an inch or two below the top of the shoulder, and just the hand, that it didn't show any of the wrist or forearm or the way it was connected to the upper arm. So the angle of that may be a bit off. I probably drew the thumb wrong too. As I said, this is just me practicing drawing and composition. I'm using my number 2 sized lead pencil, which I really love. It's a zebra, as you can tell by the big logo that can be seen on the handle of the pencil. But these are like really good for shading and really good for getting tight lines if you like tilt it on its side. I ended up wanting to do this one with just the graphite and water, so I used a watercolor brush to later blend out the graphite marks that I make. Also, pull out a big graphite chunk that I purchased and used it as a watercolor block. It's a Cretacolor 8B graphite block, and it's really good for creating nice washes of grays. If you're ever worried about not using your watercolor properly. I just like using graphite sometimes. It just reacts differently and ends up holding to the paper differently. And also ends up like mixing with other colors differently than just plain watercolor would. But yeah, I really did not like how much of an angle that I put the house on once I started drawing it. I added the plane to the picture so that one side of the composition wouldn't look too heavy, but I don't know if I achieved that balanced look that I wanted. Also, I think I drew his nose too short and his mouth too high up from the base of his chin. But here I am using my angled brush again to blur out the graphite marks. And when I'm dipping it over to the side, it's when I'm dipping it against the Cretacolor graphite block to pick up heavier grays. I'm never really confident when it comes to shading a picture. That's another one of those things I have to work on, and actually color compositions. Maybe if I would have angled the plane and not the house, the composition would have looked more interesting. I just keep being disturbed over and over again by the point of the triangle colliding with his head in this arrangement. Gosh. I need to buy some more watercolor brushes. I think the one I'm using right now is on its last leg. Okay, I'm bringing in my Crayola markers, just the little fat stubby ones, just to add in some color. I was thinking about using watercolor pencils to do this instead, or I was thinking about not doing it all, but I ended up doing the watercolor marker, not watercolor markers, they're just plain markers, and I'm just blending out the color with water like I used to do way back in the day when I didn't have watercolors, because I really wanted to be able to control how light, like I didn't want to get too much value onto, not value, what is it, intensity, saturation, I didn't want my colors to be too bright. Anyway, that's how it ended up looking.